The Galactic Empire's ultimatum echoed across the stars, demanding submission or annihilation. Every species trembled, except one. Earth stood defiant. In the grand chambers of the Galactic Council on Centauri Prime, representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered. The air crackled with tension as species after species announced their intention to surrender. Amidst the sea of alien faces, John Davis, Earth's human diplomat, listened with growing frustration. When his turn came, John rose to his feet. His voice rang out, clear and resolute. "We will not bow to tyranny. Earth chooses to fight." A collective gasp rippled through the chamber. Galen, a young Andromedan diplomat, stared at John with wide, multifaceted eyes. Her antennae twitched in disbelief. As the meeting adjourned, John's communicator buzzed. Earth's government confirmed their decision. They would fortify the solar system and seek allies. John's new mission was to recruit support and gather intel on the Empire's military capabilities. Galen approached John as he exited the chamber. "Your species surprises me," she chittered. "I request a private discussion to understand your reasoning." John nodded, seeing an opportunity. "Of course, we have much to discuss." News of Earth's defiance spread like wildfire through the galactic community. Some praised human courage, while others decried their foolishness. The Imperial fleet began mobilizing, setting course for the Sol system. In the following days, John arranged clandestine meetings with representatives from various races. He spoke passionately of freedom, of the right to self-determination. Some listened, most didn't. Galen found herself torn. Her people had already decided to surrender, yet she admired the humans' bravery. In secret, she began feeding John information about the Empire's movements and weaknesses. As the Imperial Armada drew closer to Earth, John worked tirelessly. He knew the odds were stacked against humanity. The Empire controlled thousands of worlds, while Earth was but one planet, newly emerged onto the galactic stage. Yet John remembered Earth's history, filled with tales of the underdog triumphing against impossible odds. He thought of the great empires of old, toppled by the will of the people. He recalled humanity's remarkable ability to innovate, to adapt, to survive. In his quarters on Centauri Prime, John pored over the intelligence Galen had provided. Patterns emerged, weaknesses revealed themselves. A plan began to form in his mind. As the first Imperial ships entered the Sol system, John sent an urgent message to Earth. It contained not just information, but hope. Earth might stand alone against the Galactic Empire, but it stood unbowed, unbroken, and unafraid. The stage was set for a confrontation that would shake the foundations of the galaxy. David versus Goliath on a cosmic scale. And at the center of it all stood humanity, ready to fight for its right to exist, free from tyranny. The Galactic Empire was about to learn a harsh lesson. Never underestimate the humans. John Davis wasted no time after Earth's defiant stand. He threw himself into a whirlwind of clandestine meetings, his quarters on Centauri Prime becoming a hub of furtive activity. Representatives from various alien races slipped in and out at odd hours, their visits carefully timed to avoid suspicion. In one such meeting, John faced a group of Rigelian diplomats. Their large, luminous eyes blinked slowly as they absorbed his words. "The Empire isn't invincible," John explained, gesturing to a holographic display of Imperial fleet movements. "These supply lines here and here are vulnerable. With your advanced cloaking technology, we could—" A sharp knock interrupted him. John tensed but relaxed when Galen's familiar chittering voice came through the door. He let her in, noting the urgency in her antenna's rapid twitching. "John, I have critical information," she said, her multifaceted eyes darting between him and the Rigelians. "The Empire's first strike force is assembling at the edge of your solar system." The news hit John like a physical blow. He turned to the Rigelians, his voice tight. "This is what we've been preparing for. Are you with us?" After a tense moment, the lead Rigelian nodded. "We will provide the cloaking devices. May they serve Earth well." As the Rigelians left, John's communicator buzzed with an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Chen's holographic form materialized, her face grim. "Davis, we've detected the Imperial fleet. They're amassing just beyond Pluto's orbit. We're implementing Operation Shadow Strike. John nodded, recalling the daring plan they'd developed. The stealth ships are ready? Affirmative. We're deploying them now, along with the Syrian tactical AIs you secured. This had better work, Davis. The transmission cut out, leaving John and Galen in tense silence. He turned to the Andromedan, noticing the conflict in her eyes. Galen, I can't thank you enough for your help. But you should know, if you're discovered... She cut him off with a sharp gesture. I'm aware of the risks, John, but I believe in what you're doing. My people, they're too afraid to stand up to the Empire. Someone has to. John felt a surge of admiration for her courage. He was about to respond when his communicator buzzed again. This time, it was a tactical update from Earth's military command. The stealth ships, empowered by Rigelian technology and guided by Syrian strategy, had struck their first blows against the Imperial Armada. Key communication relays were down, supply ships drifted powerless in space, and confusion reigned among the Imperial forces. Earth had bloodied the Empire's nose, and the galaxy took notice. Over the next few days, John's quarters became a hive of activity. Representatives from worlds that had initially dismissed Earth's resistance now clamored for meetings. John worked tirelessly, leveraging Earth's initial success to build a broader coalition. Galen was by his side through it all, her knowledge of galactic politics proving invaluable. She arranged meetings with influential figures, translated complex alien languages, and provided crucial context for John's negotiations. As they worked together, John found himself growing increasingly aware of Galen's presence. The way her antennae twitched when she was deep in thought, the melodic quality of her chittering laugh, the fierce intelligence behind her compound eyes. He pushed these thoughts aside, focusing on the task at hand. One evening, as they pored over reports of the ongoing battles in the Sol system, Galen suddenly stiffened. John, I want to do more, she said, her voice low and intense. I have access to high-level Imperial communications. If I could get into the central database... John's eyes widened as he realized what she was suggesting. Galen, no, that's too dangerous. If you're caught... Then I'll have done something that matters, she interrupted, her antennae quivering with emotion. John, your people have shown me what it means to stand up for what's right. Let me help. Their eyes met, and John saw the commitment in her gaze. He knew he couldn't dissuade her. With a heavy heart, he nodded. Be careful, he said softly, and thank you. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Earth's guerrilla tactics continued to frustrate the Imperial forces, but the sheer might of the Empire's fleet was overwhelming. Reports came in of fierce battles around Mars and Venus, of heroic last stands on distant asteroids. Through it all, John coordinated with Earth's military command, relaying intelligence and arranging for the covert transfer of Allied technology. He slept little, ate less, driven by the knowledge that every bit of help he secured could save lives back home. Then came the message he'd been dreading. Earth needed him back. His skills were required to coordinate the resistance efforts directly from the front lines. As John packed his meager belongings, his thoughts turned to Galen. She had taken enormous risks for Earth's cause, risks that would only grow once he left. The thought of leaving her behind tore at him. A gentle knock at his door roused him from his thoughts. Galen entered, her usual confident demeanor subdued. So, you're leaving, she said, her antennae drooping slightly. John nodded, unable to find the right words. They stood in awkward silence for a moment, the weight of unspoken emotions hanging between them. Finally, Galen spoke. I'll continue our work here. The Empire won't know what hit them. John managed a smile. I know they won't. Galen, thank you. For everything. She stepped closer, her compound eyes fixed on his face. This isn't goodbye, John. We'll see each other again. Earth will prevail. As John boarded the stealth ship that would take him home, he cast one last look at Centauri Prime. Somewhere down there, Galen was risking everything for Earth's freedom. He silently vowed to make her sacrifice count. The ship's engines hummed to life, and John strapped himself in. As the vessel rose into the star-studded sky, he steeled himself for the challenges ahead. Earth had struck the first blow against the Empire, but the real battle was just beginning. The stealth ship's engines thrummed softly as it accelerated away from Centauri Prime. John Davis sat motionless in his seat, eyes fixed on the shrinking planet below. Somewhere down there, Galen was risking everything for Earth's freedom. He pushed away the pang of emotion threatening to overwhelm him and focused on the task ahead. Entering hyperdrive in 3, 2, 1, the pilot announced. The stars outside the viewport stretched into lines, and John felt the familiar lurch as they jumped to faster-than-light travel. During the journey, John immersed himself in the intelligence reports Galen had provided. He was so engrossed that he almost missed the urgent beeping from the ship's communication console. "Mr. Davis," the captain's voice crackled over the intercom. "We're receiving a distress call from a nearby system. It's not on our planned route, but—" John was already on his feet, moving towards the bridge. "Let's hear it." The message played, filled with static and panic. "Under attack. Imperial forces. Please. Anyone." John's eyes sharp. He turned to the captain, perseverance etched on his face. "How far off course would it take us?" The captain hesitated. "A few hours, maybe half a day at most. But our orders—" "Sometimes we have to look beyond orders," John interrupted. "This could be a chance to gather crucial intelligence on Imperial tactics. Plus, these people need our help." After a moment's consideration, the captain nodded. "All right, Mr. Davis. I hope you know what you're doing." They dropped out of hyperspace near a small blue-green world. The scene that greeted them was chaos. Imperial destroyers loomed over the planet, their weapons raining destruction on the surface below. John's mind raced. "Captain, can we establish communication with the ground?" Within minutes, John was speaking with the colony's leaders. His voice calm and assured, he outlined a plan. "You need to hit them where they least expect it. Use your knowledge of the terrain. We'll provide tactical support and distraction from orbit." The colonists, initially skeptical, quickly warmed to John's strategies. They launched guerrilla attacks on Imperial landing parties, using the planet's dense forests and steep mountain ranges to their advantage. Meanwhile, John coordinated with the stealth ship's crew to run interference. They used the ship's advanced cloaking technology to appear and disappear at will, confusing Imperial sensors and drawing fire away from the colonists. The battle raged for hours. John watched the tactical displays, calling out patterns and weaknesses in the Imperial formation. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. A cheer erupted on the bridge as the last Imperial destroyer turned tail and fled the system. The colonists' voices came through the comm, jubilant and grateful. "We did it! We actually beat them back!" John allowed himself a small smile. "You did well. Remember this day. Remember that the Empire can be defeated." As they prepared to resume their journey to Earth, John knew that news of this victory would spread. A small colonial world had stood up to the Empire and won. It was a spark of hope in the darkness of space. The rest of the trip passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. When they finally arrived in the Sol system, John was immediately whisked away to a high-security facility deep beneath the Rockies. The war room was a hive of activity. Holographic displays showed the positions of Earth's fleet and the encroaching Imperial Armada. John recognized Admiral Chen, her face grim as she studied the tactical readouts. "Davis," she nodded in greeting. "What have you got for us?" John wasted no time. He laid out the intelligence Galen had provided, detailing Imperial fleet movements and potential weaknesses. He described the alliances he had forged, the technologies they had acquired. As he spoke, he could see the spark of hope growing in the eyes of Earth's leaders. When he finished, there was a moment of silence. Then a general John didn't recognize spoke up. "We've been developing a plan. We're calling it Operation Trojan Horse." John listened intently as they outlined the daring strategy. It was risky, but if it worked, it could give Earth access to advanced Imperial technology and tactical data. "We'll need someone to lead the capture team," Admiral Chen said, her eyes fixed on John. John nodded, understanding the unspoken question. "I'm ready." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. John drilled with his team, familiarizing themselves with the latest in stealth technology and capture procedures. Then, without warning, alarms blared throughout the base. The Imperial fleet had launched its first major assault. John rushed to the command center. The main view screen showed a massive battle unfolding near Jupiter. Earth's hidden bases throughout the solar system sprang into action, launching surprise attacks that disrupted the Imperial formation. "Look at that!" someone whispered in awe. Earth's main fleet was using Jupiter's intense magnetic field to their advantage, confusing Imperial targeting systems and landing devastating blows. The battle raged for hours. John watched, his heart in his throat, as ships on both sides were reduced to space debris. But against impossible odds, Earth held its ground. As the Imperial fleet retreated to regroup, a cheer went up in the command center. They had won the first round, but John knew the war was just getting started. "Sir," a young technician called out, "we're receiving a transmission from Centauri Prime. It's coded in the protocol you established with your contact there." John's heart raced as he decoded Galen's message. His blood ran cold as he read the contents. A superweapon capable of destroying entire star systems. The Empire's ultimate plan revealed. He looked up at Admiral Chen, his face grave. "We need to move up the timeline on Operation Trojan Horse. Now!" The next day, John found himself aboard a specially modified stealth ship, leading his team towards the incoming Imperial Scout Force. The plan was simple in theory: allow the scouts to penetrate Earth's outer defenses, then spring the trap. As they lay in wait, John's thoughts drifted to Galen. He hoped she was safe, prayed that her risk in sending that message hadn't exposed her. "Contact," his second-in-command whispered. "Imperial scouts entering the kill zone." John took a deep breath. "Initiate capture sequence." What followed was a blur of action. Their ships, cloaked and silent, surrounded the Imperial scouts. EMP devices fired, disabling the enemy's systems. Boarding parties launched, securing the vessels before the Imperials could react. John led one of the boarding teams, his pulse pounding as they breached the enemy ship. The fighting was intense, close quarters. A stray energy blast caught him in the side, searing pain clouding his vision. But they pushed through. Within minutes, the Imperial ships were under their control. As medics tended to his wound, John allowed himself a moment of triumph. They had done it. Earth now had direct access to Imperial technology and tactical data. But there was no time to rest on their laurels. As he was being treated in the military hospital, an urgent message came through. "Sir," a breathless aide reported, "we've detected an Andromedan scout ship approaching Earth. It's being pursued by Imperial cruisers. The pilot, sir, she's transmitting using your personal code." Galen, it had to be. Despite the protests of his doctors, John pushed himself out of bed. "Prepare a rescue squadron. I'm going out there." The pain in his side was excruciating, but John gritted his teeth as he climbed into the cockpit of one of Earth's newly upgraded ships. As they accelerated towards the approaching conflict, he could see Galen's damaged vessel limping towards them, Imperial cruisers in hot pursuit. "All ships, engage the enemy," John commanded. "Create a corridor for the Andromedan vessel." The space around them erupted in weapons fire. John pushed his ship to its limits, executing a series of maneuvers that brought him alongside Galen's crippled craft. "Galen, do you read me?" he called over the comm. "We're going to get you out of there." "There." John's voice crackled over the comm as he maneuvered his ship alongside Galen's battered vessel. "John, is that you?" Galen's normally steady voice wavered with relief and exhaustion. "It's me. We're going to tractor you in. Hang tight." As Earth's fighters engaged the pursuing Imperial cruisers, John's ship locked onto Galen's and began pulling it towards safety. The journey back to Earth was tense, with John constantly checking on Galen's status and coordinating with the defensive squadrons. Once safely within Earth's protective envelope, medical teams rushed to Galen's ship. John watched anxiously as they extracted her from the cockpit, her usually vibrant purple skin pale and marred with cuts and bruises. "John," she whispered as they placed her on a stretcher, "the Empire, they have a weapon. We have to—" "Shh," John soothed, grasping her hand. "You're safe now. We'll talk soon." As Galen was whisked away for medical attention, John found himself summoned to an emergency strategy session. Despite the protest of his own doctors, He insisted on attending via holographic link from his hospital bed. The room fell silent as Galen's information about the Imperial superweapon was relayed. Admiral Chen's face grew ashen as she processed the implications. A weapon capable of triggering artificial supernovas, one of the scientists said, his voice trembling. The destructive potential is incalculable. John leaned forward, ignoring the pain in his side. We need to act fast. If the Empire deploys this weapon, they could annihilate entire star systems within seconds, Admiral Chen finished, her eyes hard with tenacity. What followed was hours of intense debate and planning. John watched as Earth's best minds grappled with the existential threat posed by the Nova Eradicator, as the superweapon had been codenamed. Finally, a two-pronged strategy emerged. The first part involved a massive disinformation campaign aimed at convincing the Empire that Earth had discovered a fatal flaw in the superweapon's design. If we can make them doubt the weapon's reliability, argued the head of Earth's intelligence division, we might buy ourselves some time. The second part of the strategy was far riskier, a daring raid on the Imperial shipyard where the Nova Eradicator was being constructed. It's a suicide mission, someone muttered. John's hologram straightened. I'll lead it. Admiral Chen's eyebrows shot up. Davis, you're injured. We can't. With all due respect, Admiral, John interrupted, I have first-hand experience with Imperial tactics. We need every advantage we can get. After a moment of tense silence, Chen nodded. Very well. Assemble your team. Over the next few days, John threw himself into preparations, coordinating with Earth scientists and engineers as they worked to adapt captured Imperial technology for the raid. The Rigelians contributed cutting-edge AI systems to help navigate Imperial computer networks. Meanwhile, Earth's successful defense against the Imperial fleet and Galen's dramatic rescue had ignited a spark of hope across the galaxy. John watched with a mixture of pride and anxiety as a loose coalition formed around Earth, with other worlds joining the fight against the Empire. Galen, once recovered, proved invaluable in planning the infiltration of the shipyard. Her knowledge of Andromedan and Imperial protocols filled crucial gaps in their intelligence. During one late-night planning session, Galen found John alone, poring over schematics of the shipyard. You should be resting, she said softly, her antennae twitching with concern. John looked up, a tired smile on his face. So should you. They worked in companionable silence for a while, the shared weight of their mission hanging between them. Finally, Galen spoke. John, I thank you for coming for me. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the depth of their connection was palpable. John reached out, gently touching her arm. Always. As the day of the raid approached, tensions on Earth reached a fever pitch. John pushed his strike team through grueling training simulations, preparing them for every conceivable scenario. Again, he commanded, watching as his team navigated a holographic recreation of the shipyard. We need to shave another 30 seconds off our infiltration time. Just hours before the raid was set to begin, alarms blared through the command center. Long-range sensors had detected a massive Imperial fleet mobilizing near the shipyard. The resistance leaders convened an emergency meeting. John listened as voices raised in heated debate. We should abort, one general argued. The odds are impossible now. If we abort, the Nova Eradicator becomes operational, Admiral Chen countered. We may never get another chance. All eyes turned to John. He took a deep breath, weighing the monumental decision before him. We proceed, he said firmly. The stakes are too high to turn back now. As the strike team boarded their specially modified stealth ships, John found Galen waiting for him by the hangar doors. I guess this is it, she said, her voice thick with emotion. John nodded, words failing him. They stood for a moment, the enormity of their mission hanging between them. Then, with a shared nod of understanding and affection, they turned and boarded their respective ships. The raid began with a precisely calculated jump, bringing the strike team just outside the shipyard's sensor range. As they emerged from hyperspace, the true scale of their challenge became apparent. The shipyard loomed before them, a massive structure filled with defenses. At its center, the Nova Eradicator's ominous silhouette stood as a stark reminder of the stakes involved. All units, initiate stealth approach, John commanded, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Remember your training. We have one shot at this. As the strike team began their carefully choreographed dance through the shipyard's outer defenses, John's sensors picked up an anomaly. Control, are you seeing this? He called back to Earth. The defense grid, it's different. Confirmed, came the tense reply. It appears they've implemented new security measures. Updating your infiltration route now. John's mind raced as he assimilated the new information. Someone on the Imperial side had anticipated their move. The question was, how much did they know? As they penetrated deeper into the shipyard's defenses, the resistance of John and his team encountered grew steadily fiercer. It became clear that they were up against more than just standard Imperial protocols. Watch your six, John called out, as a patrol of sleek, unfamiliar fighter craft suddenly materialized behind them. New bogies, unknown configuration. The strike teams scattered, their meticulously planned formation dissolving into a frantic dogfight. John's hands flew over his controls, pushing his ship to its limits as he evaded the relentless pursuit. Earth Control, we need options, he shouted into his comm. These aren't standard Imperial tactics. As the battle raged around the massive form of the Nova Eradicator, John realized with growing dread that their carefully laid plans were unraveling. The fate of the stars hung in the balance, and the clock was ticking. They needed a new strategy, and fast. Through the chaos of battle, John caught a glimpse of Galen's ship, darting between Imperial defenses with preternatural skill. A spark of an idea formed in his mind. If they couldn't stick to the plan, maybe it was time to improvise. Galen, he called over a secure channel, I've got a crazy idea. You up for it? A crazy idea. You up for it? John's voice crackled through the comm, barely audible over the chaos of battle. Galen's ship executed a perfect barrel roll, evading a barrage of Imperial fire. At this point, I'm open to anything. What's the plan? John's mind raced as he formulated the details. We can't penetrate their defenses with our current strategy. We need to change tactics. Remember that Imperial freighter we captured last month? The one we've been studying. What about it? It's time we put it to use. We're going to walk right through their front door. As John relayed his plan to the team, they regrouped at a nearby asteroid field, using the dense collection of space rocks as cover from Imperial sensors. The strike team worked quickly, retrofitting the captured freighter with hidden weapons and equipment. Galen's expertise proved invaluable as she used her knowledge of Imperial protocols to create forged clearance codes. Her fingers flew over the holographic interface, purple skin reflecting the soft blue glow of the screens. These codes should get us past the initial checkpoints, she said, her antennae twitching with concentration. But they won't hold up under intense scrutiny. We'll need to sell our cover story. John nodded, donning an Imperial officer's uniform. The stiff fabric felt alien against his skin, a constant reminder of the precarious nature of their plan. Everyone clear on their roles? The team nodded, tension evident in their tightly controlled movements as they prepared for the mission ahead. As they approached the shipyard in their disguised vessel, the massive structure loomed before them. The Nova Eradicator's ominous silhouette dominated the view, a stark reminder of the catastrophic consequences should they fail. John's palms were slick with sweat as he gripped the controls, guiding the freighter towards the first security checkpoint. A gruff voice crackled over the comm. Unscheduled supply vessel, identify yourself and state your purpose. John swallowed hard, forcing his voice to remain steady. This is supply freighter Zeta 19, delivering emergency coolant systems for the primary reactor core. Transmitting clearance codes now. Seconds stretched into eternity as they waited for a response. Finally, the voice returned. Codes verified. Proceed to docking bay 7 for inspection. As they maneuvered into the assigned bay, John caught sight of a tall, imposing figure waiting on the platform. Heads up, he muttered to Galen. Looks like we've got a welcoming committee. Commander Zack stood perfectly upright, his cybernetic eyes scanning the approaching freighter with evident suspicion. As John and Galen disembarked, playing the roles of Imperial officers, Zack's voice cut through the din of the busy hangar. I don't recall authorizing any emergency deliveries. Explain yourselves. Galen stepped forward, her posture mirroring the rigid Imperial stance. Sir, the order came directly from Sector Command. The primary reactor's efficiency has dropped 7% in the last cycle. These coolant systems are critical to maintaining optimal performance. Zax's organic eye narrowed. I see. And why wasn't I informed of this efficiency drop? John intervened, injecting a note of exasperation into his voice. Commander, with all due respect, we're just following orders. If you have concerns about the chain of command, I suggest you take it up with Sector Command. For a tense moment, Zax's gaze bored into them. Then almost imperceptibly, he nodded. Very well. Proceed with the unloading, but I want a full inspection of every crate before it leaves this hangar. As the inspection team began their work, John and Galen exchanged glances. They needed to buy time for the rest of the strike team to execute their part of the plan. Galen launched into a detailed explanation of the coolant systems, peppering her speech with technical jargon to confuse and distract the inspectors. John, meanwhile, casually positioned himself near the freighter's boarding ramp, blocking the view of the ship's interior. Inside the freighter, the rest of the strike team moved with silent efficiency. They slipped out through a concealed hatch, using the distraction provided by John and Galen to infiltrate the shipyard. Their objectives: sabotage critical systems and plant explosives on power relays and communication arrays. As the inspection dragged on, John felt the weight of each passing second. He knew their window of opportunity was rapidly closing. Just as he feared their ruse would be discovered, alarms blared throughout the shipyard. Commander Zax's cybernetic eye flashed as he received an urgent transmission. We're under attack. All personnel to battle stations. In the ensuing chaos, John and Galen seized their chance. They sprinted towards the Nova Eradicator's control center, discarding their Imperial disguises as they ran. The sound of blaster fire echoed through the corridors as they encountered heavy resistance from Imperial guards. John ducked behind a bulkhead, returning fire as Galen used her Andromedan agility to outflank their attackers. A stray bolt caught John in the shoulder, searing pain clouding his vision. Gritting his teeth, he pushed forward, Galen clearing the path ahead. As they burst into the control center, they found Commander Zax already there, his hands flying over the main console. You're too late, he snarled. The Nova Eradicator's launch sequence has been initiated. John leapt towards the controls, using every ounce of his knowledge gained from studying captured Imperial technology. His fingers danced across the interface, searching for a weakness, a backdoor, anything to stop the countdown. Galen positioned herself at the entrance, her blaster a blur of motion as she held off waves of Imperial reinforcements. John, whatever you're going to do it fast. Sweat beaded on John's forehead as he worked, the pain in his shoulder a distant concern compared to the stakes at hand. Then he saw it, a vulnerability in the Nova Eradicator's programming, a flaw they had never anticipated. Just as his fingers moved to exploit the weakness, a massive force slammed into him. Commander Zax had launched himself across the room, tackling John away from the console. They grappled fiercely, each fighting for control. Zax's cybernetic strength gave him an edge, but John's combat experience allowed him to hold his own. They traded blows, each impact jarring in its intensity. John could taste blood in his mouth as he fought with everything he had. Galen, he shouted between gasps. The console! Shut it down! Galen glanced between the firefight at the door and the control panel, making a split-second decision. She dove for the console, her fingers a blur as she input the shutdown sequence John had discovered. With a final desperate surge of strength, John managed to pin Zax to the ground. The commander struggled beneath him, fury contorting his features. Now, Galen, John yelled. Galen slammed her hand down on the final command. For a heart-stopping moment, nothing happened. Then slowly the ominous hum of the Nova Eradicator began to fade. No, Zax roared, but it was too late. The superweapon had been neutralized. John delivered a final blow, knocking Zax unconscious. He staggered to his feet, every muscle screaming in protest. We did it, he breathed, hardly daring to believe it. Galen nodded, her expression a mix of relief and persistence. We're not out of this yet. We still need to get out of here. As if in response to her words, the shipyard shook violently. The explosives planted by their team had begun to detonate, throwing the entire facility into chaos. John activated his comm. All units, begin extraction. Head to the rendezvous point. They fought their way back through the shipyard, the once orderly facility now a maze of smoke, debris, and panicked Imperial personnel. By the time they reached the freighter, it bore little resemblance to the nondescript supply ship that had entered the shipyard. Scorch marks marred its hull, and makeshift weapons protruded from hastily cut ports. As the last of the strike team boarded, John took the pilot's seat, his injured shoulder protesting every movement. Galen slid into the co-pilot's chair beside him, her fingers flying over the controls. "Weapon systems online," she reported, "but our shields are at 30% capacity. We took heavy damage during the firefight." John nodded grimly. "We'll have to make it work. Launching now." The freighter lurched as it lifted off, immediately coming under fire from the shipyard's remaining defenses. John pushed the engines to their limit, weaving through the debris field created by their own explosives. Imperial fighters poured out of the shipyard in pursuit, their weapons fire lighting up the space around them. The freighter shuddered under the assault, alarms blaring throughout the ship. "Shields critical!" Galen shouted over the cacophony. "We can't take much more of this." John's mind raced, searching for a solution. Their planned escape route was too heavily guarded, and they lacked the firepower to fight their way through. Then he saw it, a massive nebula, its swirling gases promising refuge. "Hold on, everyone," he called out. "This is going to get rough." He angled the freighter towards the nebula, pushing the damaged ship to its absolute limits. The pursuing Imperial ships hesitated for a moment, clearly wary of the navigational hazards posed by the dense gas and electromagnetic interference. As they plunged into the nebula, visibility dropped to near zero. John flew by instinct and the faint readings from their damaged sensors, praying that the Imperial ships wouldn't risk following them in. Slowly, the sounds of battle faded, replaced by the eerie quiet of the nebula. John allowed himself to relax marginally, slumping in his seat as the adrenaline began to wear off. Galen reached out, placing a hand on his uninjured shoulder. "That was some flying," she said softly. "You got us out of there." John managed a tired smile. "We did it together. All of us." As the reality of their success began to sink in, John felt a complex mix of emotions. They had dealt a significant blow to the Empire, potentially saving countless lives. But the cost had been high. He could see the toll written on the faces of his surviving team members, hear it in the silence where fallen comrades should have been. The freighter drifted through the nebula, its occupants working to make urgent repairs. They had a long journey ahead to reach the nearest resistance outpost, and the Empire would undoubtedly be hunting for them. As John and Galen worked side by side to patch a ruptured coolant line, their hands brushed. They paused, looking at each other in the dim emergency lighting. No words were needed. The shared experience of the mission, the weight of their victory, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead all passed between them in that glance. John knew that their success would inspire hope across the galaxy, potentially turning the tide of the war. But he also knew that the Empire would retaliate with brutal force. The conflict had entered a new phase, and the challenges ahead would test them all. For now, though, they had won a critical victory. As the damaged freighter limped through the nebula, carrying its cargo of weary but determined resistance fighters, John allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. They had proven that the Empire could be fought, that it could be beaten. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the damaged freighter limped through the nebula, John knew their journey was nowhere near the end. The ship's systems flickered, power fluctuating dangerously as they pushed deeper into the swirling clouds of gas and dust. "Fuel levels critical," Galen reported, her fingers dancing over the console. "We've got maybe 2 more jumps before we're running on fumes." John nodded grimly. "Any friendly outpost within range?" Galen consulted the star charts, her brow furrowing. "There's a neutral trading post on Zeta 9. It's not ideal, but it might be our only option." "Set a course," John decided. "We'll have to risk it." The journey to Zeta-9 was tense. Every creak and groan of the ship's stressed hull, a reminder of their precarious situation. When they finally emerged from hyperspace above the planet, a collective sigh of relief echoed through the ship. But as they approached the trading post, something felt off. John's instincts, honed by years of combat, screamed danger. "Wait," he said, holding up a hand as Galen prepared to transmit their landing codes. "Look at the traffic patterns. They're too orderly, too military." Galen's eyes widened as she realized what John had spotted. Imperial occupation? "Seems like it," John confirmed. "But we don't have a choice. We need those supplies." They landed under the guise of a routine trading mission, the ship's remaining stealth systems concealing their battle damage. As the ramp lowered, John turned to address the team. "Galen and I will lead a small group to secure supplies. The rest of you, stay with the ship and be ready for a quick exit." Moving through the outpost was like navigating a minefield. Imperial troops patrolled the streets, their white armor a stark contrast to the colorful hodgepodge of the trading post's usual occupants. John and Galen, disguised as common traders, carefully made their way toward the supply depot. As they rounded a corner, they nearly collided with an Imperial officer. John's hand instinctively went to his concealed blaster, but something in the officer's eyes made him pause. "You're not supposed to be here," the officer hissed, glancing around nervously. "This outpost is under Imperial control." Galen stepped forward, her voice low and intense. "And you don't seem too happy about that, Commander?" "Vex," the officer supplied. "Commander Vex, and no, I'm not. I've seen too much, done too much. I want out." John and Galen exchanged a look. This could be a trap, but it could also be an invaluable opportunity. "We might be able to help each other," John said carefully. "We need supplies and fuel. You need a way out. But first, we need to know we can trust you." Vex nodded, understanding the implication. "The Empire is planning retaliation for the destruction of the Nova Eradicator. Massive fleets are mobilizing for a full-scale invasion of the Sol system. Earth is the primary target." The information hit John like a physical blow. Earth, his home, was in imminent danger. He looked at Galen, saw his own tenacity reflected in her eyes. "All right, Commander," John decided. "Help us get what we need, and we'll get you out of here." With Vex's help, they were able to secure the necessary supplies and fuel far more quickly than they had hoped. As they made their way back to the ship, alarms began to blare throughout the outpost. "They've discovered my defection," Vex said, his face pale. "We need to move now." The dash back to the ship was a blur of blaster fire and shouted orders. John's team provided covering fire as they sprinted up the ramp, Imperials in hot pursuit. "Go, go, go!" John yelled as he slammed the ramp controls. The ship lifted off even before the ramp had fully closed, streaking into the sky under a hail of turbo-laser fire. As they broke atmosphere, Galen's console lit up with warnings. "Imperial ships incoming! They're hailing us!" A face appeared on the screen, hard and cruel. "This is Admiral Krell of the Imperial Navy. You are harboring a traitor and fugitives. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." John cut the transmission, his face hardened. "Like hell we will. Galen, plot a course through that asteroid field. We're going to lose them in there." What followed was a harrowing chase through a maze of tumbling space rocks. John's piloting skills were pushed to their absolute limits as he wove through gaps barely wider than the ship, Imperial fighters exploding against asteroids in their wake. Finally, after what felt like hours, they emerged on the other side of the field. The sensors showed clear space behind them. "We've lost them," Galen confirmed, relief evident in her voice. John allowed himself a small smile. "Good work, everyone. Now let's get this information back to Earth." As they set course for home, John couldn't shake the weight of what they'd learned. The Empire was coming, in force, and Earth had precious little time to prepare. He looked around at his battered but unbroken team, at Galen working tirelessly at her station, at their newfound ally, Vex. They had won a victory in destroying the Nova Eradicator, but the war was far from finished. The real battle, it seemed, was just beginning. As the stars streaked by outside, John steeled himself for the challenges ahead. Whatever came next, they would face it together. As the stars faded from view, John eased the freighter out of hyperspace. The familiar blue-green orb of Earth filled the view screen, a sight that usually brought comfort, but now it filled him with dread. "Status report," he called out, scanning the ship's instruments. Galen's fingers flew over her console. "Multiple contacts detected. The Imperial fleet is already here." John's mind focused. "How many?" "Hundreds," Galen replied, her voice tight. "Maybe thousands." The ship's comm crackled to life. "Unidentified vessel, this is Earth Defense Command. Identify yourself immediately." John keyed the transmitter. "EDC, this is Captain John Riley, returning from Operation Nova. Authorization code Tango 937. A moment of tense silence followed before the comm came back to life. "Authorization confirmed. Welcome home, Captain. You're just in time for the party." As they approached Earth's outer defense perimeter, John and his crew witnessed the awesome spectacle of humanity's last line of defense. A vast network of automated platforms hung in space, their sleek forms jam-packed with weapons. Pale blue energy fields shimmered around them, a testament to the reverse-engineered Imperial technology that had made their creation possible. The platforms sprang to life as the Imperial Armada entered range. Brilliant lances of energy sliced through space, finding their marks with unerring precision. Imperial ships exploded in silent bursts of light and debris. "My God," breathed Commander Vex, staring wide-eyed at the battle unfolding before them. "I've never seen weapons like these." John allowed himself a grim smile. "Courtesy of your former employers, Commander. Earth's been busy." Their moment of triumph was short-lived. The sheer number of Imperial ships began to overwhelm the outer defenses. One by one, the platforms winked out of existence, overwhelmed by concentrated fire. "We're running out of time," Galen said, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. "If we're going to strike, it needs to be now." John nodded, his expression hardening. "Agreed. All hands, prepare for Phase 2. The freighter peeled away from Earth's defenses, making a beeline for a massive Imperial vessel at the heart of the enemy fleet. Unlike the uniform wedge shapes of the Star Destroyers, this ship was a colossal, irregular fortress of jutting spires and cavernous hangars. "That's it," Vex confirmed. "The Imperial Flagship. If your intelligence is correct, the gravity weapon will be there." As they approached, John activated the ship's final surprise. The battered freighter shimmered and changed, its hull reconfiguring into the smooth lines of an Imperial shuttle. The transformation complete, John transmitted the forge clearance codes Vex had provided. "Here goes nothing," John muttered as they waited for a response. After an agonizing pause, the comm chirped. "Shuttle THX 1138, you are cleared for docking in Bay 94. The team breathed a collective sigh of relief as John piloted the disguised ship into the cavernous hangar. As soon as they touched down, John turned to address his crew. "You all know the plan. Galen, you take Alpha Team to the reactor. I'll lead Beta Team to the weapon control room. Move fast, stay quiet, and if you're compromised, go loud and complete the mission at all costs." The two teams split up, moving with practiced efficiency through the labyrinthine corridors of the Imperial Flagship. John's team encountered their first obstacle at a security checkpoint. Two stormtroopers stood guard, their white armor a stark contrast to the ship's dark interior. John nodded to his team. In one fluid motion, they raised their weapons, sleek, Earth-made rifles that melded human innovation with Imperial tech. Two quick, silent shots, and the guards crumpled to the floor. "Move," John ordered, and they pressed on. Meanwhile, Galen's team utilized a different approach. Using her knowledge of Imperial ship designs, she led them through maintenance tunnels and rarely used access ways. They moved like ghosts through the ship's bowels, avoiding detection. As they neared the reactor, Galen held up a hand, signaling for a halt. Voices echoed from around the corner. She closed her eyes, focusing her enhanced Andromedan senses. Two engineers, discussing routine maintenance. Galen made a series of quick hand signals. Her team responded instantly, producing small devices from their gear. They rolled the spheres around the corner. There was a soft hiss, followed by the thud of bodies hitting the floor. "Stun gas," Galen explained to a wide-eyed Vex. "We're not barbarians." They dragged the unconscious engineers into a storage closet and continued on their way. John's team faced heavier resistance as they neared the weapon control room. They rounded a corner to find a full squad of stormtroopers. There was a moment of mutual surprise before the corridor erupted into chaos. Energy bolts sizzled through the air as both sides took cover. John's team had the advantage of superior weaponry, their rifles cutting through Imperial armor with ease. But the stormtroopers had numbers on their side. "Thorn!" John called out. "We need an exit." The team's demolitions expert grinned, producing a small disc-shaped charge from his pack. He slapped it onto the wall and triggered the detonator. The explosion rocked the corridor, creating a gaping hole into an adjacent chamber. John's team poured through the opening, leaving the confused stormtroopers behind. As they regrouped, John's comm crackled to life. It was General Stone, his voice tight with tension. "Captain, whatever you're going to do it fast. We're losing ground out here." John keyed his mic. "Understood, General. We're almost there." They pushed on, fighting their way through increasingly heavy resistance. Finally, they reached the massive doors of the weapon control room. "Plant the charges," John ordered. "We'll breach on my mark." As his team set the explosives, John allowed himself a moment to catch his breath. He thought of Earth, of everything they were fighting for, of Galen somewhere in the bowels of this ship, facing her own battles. He pushed the thoughts aside. There would be time for reflection later, if they survived. "Charges set," Thorne reported. John nodded, raising his rifle. "Breach!" The doors exploded inward in a shower of metal and sparks. John's team surged through the opening, weapons at the ready. They found themselves in a vast chamber dominated by a central pillar of pulsing energy. Control stations ringed the room, manned by wide-eyed technicians. "Hands where I can see them," John shouted. "Away from the controls!" The technicians complied, raising their hands in surrender. John's team moved quickly, securing the room and beginning the process of sabotaging the weapon. But their victory was short-lived. A slow clap echoed through the chamber, followed by a voice that sent chills down John's spine. "Impressive, Captain. Very impressive indeed." John turned slowly, coming face to face with a towering figure in ornate black armor. Grand Marshal Zorn, the infamous Imperial commander, stepped into view. "But I'm afraid," Zorn continued, igniting a crackling energy blade, "that this is where your little insurgency ends." John raised his rifle, but Zorn was faster. With a gesture, the weapon was torn from John's grasp, clattering uselessly to the floor. "Now then," Zorn said, his voice filled with cold amusement, "shall we dance?" As John squared off against the fearsome Imperial leader, the fate of Earth hung in the balance. The real battle, it seemed, was only just beginning. John's muscles tensed as he faced the imposing figure of Grand Marshal Zorn. The energy blade crackled menacingly, casting an eerie glow across the weapon control room. Just as Zorn lunged forward, a deafening explosion rocked the ship, throwing both men off balance. Alarms blared throughout the vessel as Galen's voice came through John's comm. "Reactors critical! We need to go, now!" John seized the moment of confusion, diving for his fallen rifle. He rolled to his feet, weapon raised, only to find Zorn had vanished in the chaos. There was no time to search for the Imperial commander. "All teams, evacuate immediately," John ordered, leading his group out of the control room. They raced through the corridors, dodging panicking Imperial personnel and dodging falling debris. The ship shuddered violently as they reached their disguised shuttle. John took the controls, guiding them out of the disintegrating hangar bay and into the space battle beyond. As they cleared the Imperial flagship, it erupted in a massive explosion that lit up the sky. The shockwave buffeted their small craft, but John's expert piloting kept them steady. In the aftermath, they watched as the remaining Imperial ships, their command structure in disarray, began a hasty retreat. The comm crackled with cheers and exclamations of victory from Earth's defenders. General Stone's voice cut through the celebration. "Well done, Captain. Return to base immediately for debriefing." As they approached Earth, John took in the sight of the battered but unbroken defense platforms, a testament to human ingenuity and drive. The real work, he knew, was just beginning. Weeks passed as Earth celebrated its victory and began the arduous process of rebuilding. John found himself in endless meetings with military brass and government officials, recounting the mission and helping to formulate strategies for the future. One morning, he was summoned to a high-level briefing with General Stone. The grizzled commander stood before a holographic star map, his face grim. "We've bought ourselves some time, but the Empire won't stay licking its wounds forever," Stone began. "We need to press our advantage. That's where you come in, Captain." The star map zoomed in on a familiar system. "Proxima Centauri b," Stone continued, "a technologically advanced world that's remained neutral in this conflict. We need them on our side if we're going to have any chance against future Imperial incursions." John nodded, understanding the importance of the mission. "What's the plan, sir?" "You and Galen will lead a diplomatic team to Proxima Centauri b. Your goal is to convince their government to join our alliance. Offer them protection, shared technology, whatever it takes. We can't afford to let them fall into Imperial hands." As John absorbed the details of the mission, Dr. Elena Rodriguez entered the room, her arms full of data pads. "Captain, before you leave, I wanted to brief you on our latest developments," she said, her eyes bright with excitement. She activated a holographic display showing schematics of the automated defense platforms. "We're integrating captured Imperial tech into a new generation of these units. They'll be faster, more powerful, and nearly impossible to detect until they open fire." John whistled, impressed. That should give any Imperial counterattack a nasty surprise. As the briefing concluded, John sought out Galen to discuss their upcoming mission. He found her in the hangar bay, overseeing modifications to their ship. "Ready for another adventure?" he asked, approaching her. Galen turned, a small smile on her face. "Always. Though I must admit, diplomacy isn't my strong suit." John chuckled. "Mine either, but we've faced worse odds." As they prepared for departure, reports came in of Imperial forces regrouping at the edge of known space. The news added urgency to their mission. Earth needed allies, and fast. Their journey to Proxima Centauri b was uneventful, giving them time to study the complex political landscape they were about to enter. As they entered the planet's atmosphere, John marveled at the gleaming cities below, their architecture a blend of organic forms and advanced technology. They were greeted at the spaceport by a delegation led by Minister Zalax, a tall, willowy being with iridescent skin. "Welcome to Proxima Centauri b," Zalax said, his voice melodious but with an undercurrent of tension. "We have much to discuss." The negotiations proved more challenging than John had anticipated. While some members of the Proximan government were eager to join Earth's alliance, a vocal faction led by Zalax argued for caution. "The Empire's reach is vast," Zalax said during one heated session. "What guarantee can Earth provide that aligning with you won't bring destruction to our world?" John leaned forward, his voice firm. "Minister, there are no guarantees in war, but I can promise you this. Earth and its allies stand united against Imperial aggression. Together, we have a fighting chance. Alone, we'll fall one by one." As days turned into weeks, John and Galen worked tirelessly to win over the Proximan leadership. They arranged demonstrations of Earth's military capabilities, shared intelligence on Imperial movements, and highlighted the potential benefits of joining the alliance. But something about Zalax's opposition nagged at John. The minister's arguments seemed too polished, his information on Imperial strengths too precise. One night, as they returned to their quarters, Galen pulled John aside. "I've been monitoring Zalax's communications," she whispered. "He's been in contact with someone off-world, using an encrypted channel I've never seen before." John's eyes narrowed. "Imperial?" Galen nodded. "It's possible. We need to find proof before he can sway the government." Their investigation led them through the shadowy underbelly of Proximan society. They followed leads, bribed informants, and narrowly escaped detection by Zalax's security forces. Finally, they uncovered irrefutable evidence of the minister's treachery. With time running out before the final vote on joining the alliance, John and Galen raced to present their findings to the Proximan leadership. But as they approached the government complex, they found their way blocked by a squad of heavily armed security officers. Zalak stepped forward, his earlier charm replaced by cold fury. "I'm afraid I can't allow you to interfere with the natural course of events," he said, raising a weapon. "Proxima Centauri B will submit to the Empire, as all worlds must, eventually." John and Galen exchanged a quick glance, years of working together allowing them to communicate without words. In a fluid motion, they sprang into action. John dove for cover as Galen unleashed a burst of Andromedan energy, scattering their attackers. The air filled with the sound of energy weapons as John and Galen fought their way towards the government chambers. They had to reach the Proximan leaders before Zalax could enact his plan. The fate of not just Proxima Centauri B, but potentially the entire resistance hung in the balance. John and Galen exchanged a quick glance, their years of partnership allowing for silent communication. In a fluid motion, they sprang into action, neutralizing Zalax and his security team with practiced efficiency. As they rushed into the government chambers, alarms blared throughout the complex. John addressed the stunned Proximan leaders, presenting the evidence of Zalax's treachery. The revelation sent shockwaves through the assembly, shifting the tide of opinion decisively in favor of joining Earth's alliance. With the diplomatic mission accomplished, John and Galen prepared for their return to Earth. As they boarded their ship, a priority transmission came through from General Stone. "Captain, we need you back immediately." Stone's holographic image flickered with urgency. "We've detected a new Imperial threat that changes everything." During the journey home, John and Galen pored over the intelligence reports streaming in from Earth. The Empire had developed a planet-killer battleship called the Worldbreaker, a weapon capable of obliterating entire worlds. As they entered Earth's orbit, the planet below was a hive of activity. Defense platforms swarmed with construction crews, upgrading and reinforcing the planet's protective shield. John piloted their ship to a landing pad where General Stone waited, his face grim. "Welcome back," Stone said, leading them to a secure briefing room. "I hope you're ready for another fight." Inside, holographic displays showcased the might of the Worldbreaker. Its massive form dwarfed even the largest Imperial ships they'd encountered before. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before the assembly of military leaders, her eyes alight with commitment. "We've developed a new energy weapon," she explained, bringing up schematics of a sleek, powerful-looking device. "It's designed to penetrate the Worldbreaker's defenses and target its reactor core." John studied the weapon, impressed by its compact design and potential power output. "How do we deliver it?" he asked. General Stone stepped forward. "That's where you come in, Captain. We're launching a preemptive strike on the Imperial shipyard where the Worldbreaker is stationed. You'll lead the assault." The next few days were a blur of preparation. John was assigned command of the Resistance Flagship, a state-of-the-art battlecruiser named Defiance. Galen took charge of a wing of fast attack craft, perfect for her aggressive piloting style. As the strike force assembled in high orbit, John marveled at the diverse array of ships. Vessels from Earth, Proxima Centauri B, and other allied worlds formed a formidable fleet, representing the combined might of the Resistance. On the bridge of the Defiance, John addressed his crew. "We face a threat unlike any we've encountered before, but together, we are stronger than any weapon the Empire can create." The experimental jump drive engaged, propelling the fleet across vast distances in the blink of an eye. As they emerged on the outskirts of the Imperial shipyard system, alarms blared across the Defiance. "Multiple hull breaches," an officer called out. "The jump drive's damaged." John's mind raced, assessing the situation. "Initiate emergency repairs. All hands, prepare for battle stations." As repair crews worked feverishly to patch the Defiance, the fleet approached the shipyard. Imperial defenses sprang to life, filling space with energy bolts and missiles. "All ships, engage at will," John ordered. "Galen, take your wing and target those defense platforms." The space around the shipyard erupted into chaos. Resistance ships weaved through debris fields, using the station's own structure for cover as they launched precision strikes against key targets. John coordinated the assault from the Defiance, his tactical display a whirlwind of movement. He watched as Galen's attack wing carved through Imperial fighters, clearing a path for the larger ships. Suddenly, a massive energy signature lit up John's sensors. The Worldbreaker was powering up its main weapon. "All ships, break off and regroup," John called out. But he knew they'd never clear the blast radius in time. He made a split-second decision. "Galen, form up on me. We're going in." Leading a small task force, John pushed through the Imperial lines, aiming straight for the Worldbreaker. Point defense systems filled space with deadly fire, claiming several resistance ships. As they closed in on the massive battleship, the Defiance shuddered under heavy fire. Sparks flew on the bridge as systems overloaded. "Weapons are offline," an officer reported. John's mind raced, searching for a solution. He opened a channel to Galen. "We need to deliver Dr. Rodriguez's weapon directly to the Worldbreaker's reactor core. Can you do it?" There was a moment of silence before Galen's reply came through. "Consider it done." John watched on his tactical display as Galen's ship broke from formation, weaving through the Worldbreaker's superstructure with impossible precision. The rest of the fleet provided covering fire, drawing the Imperial defenses away from her approach vector. Tense minutes passed as Galen's signal disappeared into the depths of the massive ship. John held his breath, watching the Worldbreaker's energy readings climb towards critical levels. Suddenly, a massive explosion rocked the Imperial battleship. Chain reactions tore through its hull as the reactor core destabilized. The Worldbreaker began to break apart, taking a significant portion of the Imperial fleet with it. As the Resistance fleet regrouped and began to withdraw, John realized Galen's signal was still missing. He opened a channel to the fleet. "All ships, begin search and rescue operations. We're not leaving without her." The Defiance moved through the debris field, scanners at maximum sensitivity. As they searched, John's mind raced with possibilities. Had Galen survived? And if so, how long could she last in the hostile environment of space? As the hours ticked by, hope began to fade, but John refused to give up. He pushed the Defiance's sensors to their limits, determined to find some trace of his friend and comrade. Just as he was about to order another sweep, a faint signal caught his attention. It was weak, barely registering on the sensors, but it was there, a life sign, hidden among the twisted metal of the Worldbreaker's remains. John's heart raced as he ordered a rescue team to prepare for immediate deployment. As they suited up and boarded a shuttle, he allowed himself a moment of cautious optimism. They had won a significant victory today, but the cost had been high. Now, all he could do was hope that Galen would be among the survivors they pulled from the wreckage. The shuttle bay doors opened, revealing the chaos of the debris field. As the rescue team launched into space, John watched from the Defiance's bridge, his eyes fixed on the scanner readouts. The weak life sign flickered, a fragile beacon of hope amidst the devastation of battle. The devastation. John's breath caught in his throat as he watched the rescue team's progress on the tactical display. "We've located the signal source," the team leader reported. "It's coming from a large section of the Worldbreaker's hull." "Proceed with caution," John ordered, his voice tight with tension. "I'm coming down there." Minutes later, John found himself floating through the debris field, the bulk of the Defiance looming behind him. His EVA suit's thrusters carried him smoothly toward the twisted metal where Galen's signal originated. As he approached, he saw her craft wedged into a deep crevice, its hull scorched and battered. "Galen, do you copy?" John called over the comm channel. Static crackled in response. With practiced movements, John maneuvered to the craft's airlock. The rescue team worked quickly to cut through the damaged metal, creating an opening. As the last seal gave way, John pushed inside, his heart pounding. There, strapped into the pilot's seat, was Galen. Her eyes were closed, her skin pale, but John's suit sensors detected life signs. Relief washed over him as he reached out to touch her shoulder. Galen's eyes fluttered open. "John?" she said weakly, her voice barely audible over the comm. "Did we get it?" John nodded, a lump forming in his throat. "We got it. The Worldbreaker's gone. You did it, Galen." Despite the bulky EVA suits, John pulled Galen into an embrace. They held each other tightly, the reality of their survival sinking in. "Let's get you out of here," John said, helping Galen out of her seat. As they emerged from the wreckage, the rescue team erupted in cheers. The Defiance's shuttle maneuvered closer, its bay doors opening to receive them. Back aboard the Defiance, the medical team rushed Galen to the infirmary. John followed close behind, unwilling to leave her side. As the ship began its journey back to Earth, news of their victory spread rapidly across subspace channels. Reports flooded in from all corners of the galaxy. Systems that had long cowered under Imperial rule were rising up, emboldened by the destruction of the Worldbreaker. The Resistance's communication channels buzzed with declarations of support and pledges to join the Alliance. John stood at Galen's bedside, watching the reports stream in on a nearby monitor. "Look at what we've started," he said softly. Galen smiled weakly. "It's more than we ever dreamed possible." As the Defiance approached Earth, the planet was barely recognizable. The orbital defense grid had been expanded tenfold, a gleaming web of platforms and satellites encircling the world. Ships from a dozen allied species moved in coordinated patterns, conducting joint exercises and patrols. General Stone met them as they disembarked. "Welcome home, heroes," he said, his usually stern face breaking into a rare smile. "We have much to discuss." In the days that followed, John and Galen found themselves at the center of a whirlwind of activity. They attended briefings, strategy sessions, and diplomatic meetings. The destruction of the Worldbreaker had shifted the balance of power in the galaxy, and Earth was now at the forefront of a rapidly expanding alliance. During a ceremony at the newly rebuilt United Nations headquarters in New York, General Stone approached John and Galen. "Captain Davis," he began, then corrected himself. "Admiral Davis, in recognition of your exemplary service and leadership, you are hereby promoted and appointed as head of our new joint human-alien fleet." John blinked in surprise. "Sir, I'm honored, but—" Stone held up a hand. "The decision's already been made. We need someone with your experience and ability to bridge the gap between species." Turning to Galen, Stone continued, "And for you, we have a different kind of challenge. We'd like you to serve as Earth's ambassador to the newly formed Galactic Alliance." Galen's eyes widened. "Me? But I'm not a diplomat." "You've proven yourself more than capable of bringing different species together," Stone replied. "Your actions have earned you the respect of every world in the Alliance." As John and Galen adjusted to their new roles, reports began to trickle in of Imperial worlds declaring independence. The Empire, once a monolithic force of oppression, was fracturing from within. Then, during a high-level briefing, an intelligence officer delivered alarming news. "Our deep cover agents report that the Emperor has ordered all remaining Imperial forces to converge on Earth. They're preparing for one final, all-out assault." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. John stood, his voice steady as he addressed the assembled leaders. "Then we'll be ready for them. This is the moment we've been preparing for." In the weeks that followed, Earth became the center of feverish activity. The automated defense platforms were upgraded and expanded. Ships from dozens of allied worlds arrived daily, taking up positions in a vast defensive formation. From the bridge of the Defiance, now designated as the fleet's flagship, John oversaw the preparations. Galen stood beside him, her diplomatic skills proving invaluable in coordinating the multi-species armada. As the first Imperial ships appeared at the edge of the solar system, John opened a channel to the entire fleet. "This is Admiral Davis. The enemy we've fought for so long is making its last stand. But we are not alone. Look around you. Every ship, every being here represents a world that refused to submit to tyranny. Together, we will end the Empire's reign once and for all." The space around Earth erupted into chaos as the two fleets clashed. John coordinated the defense with precision, utilizing the unique strengths of each allied species. Swarms of agile Proximan fighters darted between capital ships, sowing confusion in the Imperial ranks. Powerful energy weapons, reverse-engineered from the Worldbreaker, lanced out from Earth's defense platforms, gutting enemy dreadnoughts. Hours into the battle, as the tide began to turn in the Alliance's favor, a priority alert flashed on John's tactical display. The Emperor's flagship had been detected, and with it, an energy signature unlike anything they'd ever seen. "It's some kind of superweapon," Galen said, analyzing the readings. "If these calculations are correct, it could create an artificial black hole. It could destroy Earth and the entire system." John's mind focused in drive. "Then we take out that ship. Now." He turned to his communications officer. "Signal the fleet. We're launching an assault on the Emperor's flagship." The Defiant surged forward, leading a strike group of the Alliance's most elite ships. They punched through the weakening Imperial line, all weapons concentrated on clearing a path to the flagship. As they drew closer, John turned to Galen. "I need you with me. We're going aboard." Galen nodded, her eyes gleaming with the same mix of fear and excitement John felt. "Just like old times?" "Just like old times," John agreed. They fought their way through waves of Imperial guards, their movements in perfect sync after years of working together. Finally, they reached the doors to the Emperor's throne room. "Ready?" John asked, his hand hovering over the door controls. Galen hefted her weapon, a determined smile on her face. "Ready?" The doors slid open, revealing the vast chamber beyond. And there, seated on a towering throne of black metal, was the Emperor himself. As the final confrontation loomed, John and Galen exchanged a quick glance. Whatever happened next would decide the fate of not just Earth, but the entire galaxy.
You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.